Every year, nearly 1 in 3 seniors suffers an injury at home, not because of illness, but because of the sheer amount of clutter around them. Today, I'll reveal 7 ruthless decluttering tricks that older adults are using to transform their homes in as little as 48 hours. These are not gentle, feel-good tips. They are bold, decisive moves that break emotional attachments, slash overwhelm, and create immediate space and freedom. If you've ever felt trapped by your belongings, these methods will finally show you how to let go. Stick with me until the end, because the 7th trick is the one most people never try, and it's the key that makes sure you never second guess your decisions again. I'm Dr. Eli Morgan. After decades of working with older adults, I've seen how clutter can drain energy, increase fall risks, and even worsen stress. My mission here is simple: to help you clear your home with the same confidence and precision you'd expect from a doctor's advice. Trick number 1, the ruthless triage method. When paramedics arrive at an accident scene, they don't waste hours debating over every detail. They make fast life or death choices using a system called triage. You and I aren't in an ambulance bay, but when it comes to a cluttered home, the same principle applies. If you hesitate, the mess wins. Here's how to adapt it. Pick one room, set a 20-minute timer, and label every single item in just 3 ways: keep, toss, or donate. No maybe pile, no I'll decide later. The moment you add those options, your progress slows to a crawl. Let me give you an example. Last month, one of my patients, Harold, an 81-year-old retired teacher, started in his garage. In less than half an hour, he had made decisions on 64 items: gardening tools, half-used paint cans, boxes of sports trophies. He told me, "I thought it would be painful, but once I forced myself to decide instantly, I felt lighter." And by the end of the weekend, his garage was finally usable again. The power of this method is speed. Seniors often tell me they feel drained just thinking about decluttering. That's because the brain burns energy when we agonize over small decisions. By forcing yourself to move fast, you bypass fatigue and actually gain momentum. Here's the ruthless part. If you catch yourself hesitating more than 5 seconds, the item automatically moves to the donate pile. Don't argue, don't rationalize. The decision is made. Now I want to hear from you. What's the hardest space in your home to make fast decisions about? Your kitchen, your closet, or maybe your basement? Drop it in the comments below. I read every one, and I'll reply with a strategy you can use immediately. And remember, this is just the first strike. The next trick is all about how to keep your energy from collapsing when the process starts to feel overwhelming, because fatigue, not clutter, is what actually stops most people. Trick number 2, the 10-minute sprint. Most people fail at decluttering because they treat it like a marathon. They dive in for hours, get emotionally exhausted, and quit halfway through. But here's the truth. Your brain is designed to focus best in short bursts, not endless sessions. That's why I recommend the 10-minute sprint. Set a timer for exactly 10 minutes, pick a very specific task, and move as quickly as you can until the timer buzzes. No overthinking, no breaks, no scrolling on your phone, just pure focused action. Why 10 minutes? Because research in behavioral psychology shows that our decision-making energy, what scientists call cognitive fuel, runs out much faster than we think. When you push beyond that, your brain looks for shortcuts, and suddenly every old photo feels like it must be saved. A short sprint protects you from slipping into that trap. Let me give you a story. One woman I worked with, Linda, age 74, hadn't touched her attic in decades. She swore it would take months to even make a dent. I challenged her. 10 minutes, nothing more. She reluctantly agreed. She ended up filling 2 whole bags in that first sprint. It wasn't perfection, but it was a win. And wins build momentum. By the end of a week, she had completed 12 10-minute sprints. That's just 2 hours of effort, yet she cleared out what she thought would take months. Now imagine this. If you did just one sprint a day, that's 365 focused sessions in a year. That's like hiring an entire crew of movers who work only in bite-sized chunks. And yet, most people quit because they believe decluttering requires long, exhausting days. Here's the best part. The more sprints you complete, the less emotionally attached you become to the objects themselves. The speed trains your brain to see the decision as the win, not the object. So let me ask you, are you someone who burns out after an hour of decluttering? If so, try a sprint today and tell me in the comments how far you got. You'll be surprised at how much progress is possible in 10 minutes flat. And coming up, trick number 3 is one of the most powerful mental shortcuts I've ever taught seniors. It's the exact test that dissolves sentimental attachment to items you thought you'd never be able to let go. Trick number 3, the stranger test. One of the biggest obstacles seniors face isn't physical clutter. It's the invisible weight of sentimental attachment. A wedding gift, a child's art project, a shelf of novels we swore we'd reread. Our hearts whisper, keep it, even when our heads know it's gathering dust. Here's the mental hack that cuts through that fog, the stranger test. It's simple. Imagine you've passed away and a total stranger is walking through your home deciding what to keep. Would that person see the item and say, this adds value to my life? If the answer is no, then why should it stay in yours? This reframe is powerful because it takes the emotion out of the decision. We stop asking, what does this mean to me in the past, and start asking, does this serve me now in the present? Let me give you an example. A gentleman I worked with, George, a retired Navy officer, had a closet stuffed with uniforms, medals, and binders of old training notes. When he applied the stranger test, the choice became clear. His grandchildren might keep a medal or two, but would they really treasure 30-year-old manuals? Of course not. By donating the uniforms to a local military museum and recycling the rest, he freed up 2 full closets. He kept 1 shadow box of his proudest achievements. And suddenly the clutter became a legacy instead of a burden. This method also works wonders with books, clothing, or kitchen gadgets. Take your bookshelf. If a stranger wouldn't pay even $1 for that cracked paperback, maybe it's time to release it. You don't have to erase your memories. You're simply filtering what truly matters from what merely lingers. And here's the medical side. Most people never consider. Holding on to piles of unused belongings isn't just a space problem. It actually increases stress hormones. A study published in the journal Personality and Social Psychology Bulletin found that people surrounded by clutter had higher levels of cortisol, the stress hormone linked to anxiety and poor sleep. By letting go of items that a stranger would never value, you're actually giving your body a break too. Now, I know this isn't easy. That's why I suggest you start with a single drawer or box. Apply the stranger test ruthlessly and watch how much lighter you feel afterwards. The first time is the hardest. After that, you'll crave the relief it brings. Let me ask you this. What category of items do you struggle most to let go of? Books? Clothes? Old photos? Drop your answer in the comments. You'll find you're not alone, and sometimes just naming the struggle is the first step to breaking free. Up next, trick number 4 builds on this idea by bringing in hard numbers, because sometimes the fastest way to break attachment is with cold, simple math. And believe me, once you see the numbers, you'll never look at just-in-case items the same way again. Trick number 4, the replacement reality check. Many of us hold on to things with the excuse, what if I need this someday? But here's the truth. Clinging to just-in-case items often costs more than simply replacing them later. I call this the replacement reality check. Ask yourself 3 blunt questions about any object you're tempted to keep. If I threw this away today, what would it actually cost to replace? How much time would it take me to find a replacement? When was the last time I actually used it? If the answers reveal that the item is cheap, easy to find, and hasn't been touched in years, then the reality is simple. It doesn't deserve your space. Take a real example. Mary, a 79-year-old widow, had 3 bread makers gathering dust in her pantry. Her reason: they still work. Maybe my kids will want one. But here's the math. A new bread maker costs $60. Meanwhile, those machines were swallowing up valuable space in her kitchen for over a decade. She finally donated 2 and kept 1. Not only did she reclaim her shelves, but she laughed when she realized she hadn't baked bread in 14 years. Now let's go deeper. Studies on consumer behavior show that the perceived value of unused items is far higher than their actual resale or replacement cost. Psychologists call this the endowment effect. We overvalue what we own simply because it's ours, but when we compare it to its real market price, the illusion shatters. That broken blender you've been saving, a brand new one at the store, is $25. Yet we treat the dusty one like it's priceless. The hidden cost isn't money, it's stress and safety. Every box of unused electronics stacked in your hallway is one more obstacle that increases fall risk. Every drawer packed with duplicates makes it harder to find what you really need, raising frustration and wasting time daily. When you factor in the toll on health and peace of mind, the so-called savings vanish. Here's a rule of thumb I teach. If an item costs less than $20 to replace and you haven't used it in 2 years, it goes. Period. The space you gain back will always be more valuable than that $20 bill. And if you're worried about waste, here's the liberating part. Donations turn clutter into community value. That old set of wrenches you never use could empower a young mechanic just starting out. The bread maker could feed a family that needs it. By releasing it, you're not throwing it away. You're reinvesting it in someone else's life. So let me challenge you right now. What's one item in your house you're keeping just in case, even though you could replace it for under $20? Write it in the comments. Putting it into words makes it 10 times easier to finally let it go. Now, I know this reality check stings a little, but trust me, the next trick makes the process gentler. It isn't about numbers. It's about protecting your limited emotional energy so you don't burn out before the job is done. Trick number 5, the energy investment scale. One of the most overlooked resources in decluttering isn't space, it's emotional energy. Every decision you make drains a little bit of that energy, and by the end of the day, most people are too depleted to keep going. That's why I teach what I call the energy investment scale. Here's how it works. Before you agonize over an object, rate it on a scale of 1 to 10. A 1 means the decision is effortless. You already know it can go. A 10 means the choice feels deeply emotional, like your wedding album or your mother's piano. Now here's the key. Spend your energy only where it counts. If an item scores a 1, 2, or 3, don't waste a drop of emotion on it. Decide quickly and move on. Save your limited energy for the 8s, 9s, and 10s, the truly meaningful pieces. For example, I worked with a retired librarian named Susan who had thousands of books in her home. At first, she rated every book like it was a 10, impossible to part with. But when she stopped and asked herself honestly, most were really 2s or 3s. Dusty paperbacks she hadn't touched in decades. Those went into donation boxes without guilt. Then she focused her energy on a small collection of rare, signed first editions that really mattered. Instead of drowning in thousands of volumes, she kept one beautiful shelf that truly reflected her love of literature. Why does this work? Because your brain has a limited pool of what psychologists call decision-making resources. If you spend it all on old t-shirts or cracked mugs, you'll have nothing left when it's time to make meaningful choices about heirlooms. By filtering with the energy scale, you preserve strength for the hard calls. Here's another layer. This method prevents regret. When you know you've reserved emotional effort only for the 8s, 9s, and 10s, you can look back without second-guessing the small stuff. The energy was spent where it mattered most. And here's the medical side. Decision fatigue is very real. A study from Stanford University found that when people make too many small choices, their self-control plummets afterwards. That means more stress, poorer sleep, and even weaker immune response. By using the scale, you're not just saving mental energy, you're protecting your health. So here's my challenge for you. Pick one drawer in your home, go through 20 items using the scale. You'll be amazed at how many easy decisions can be cleared in under 10 minutes. Comment below and tell me what category drained you most. It might surprise you. Now, clearing with the energy scale helps preserve strength, but there's one more step, because sometimes it isn't about effort, it's about identity. And in the next trick, I'll show you how to ask one life-changing question that transforms decluttering from something painful into something exciting. Trick number 6, the future self-test. Most people make decluttering decisions by looking backward. This was from my career, or this reminds me of my kids when they were little. But the truth is, your home should serve the person you're becoming, not just the person you used to be. That's why I teach the future self-test. The question is simple. Does this item serve the life I want to live in the next 5 years? If the answer is no, then it belongs in your past, not in your present space. Take Walter, a 76-year-old who once ran his own accounting firm. His closet was packed with tailored suits and boxes of financial manuals. But today, his passion is volunteering at an animal shelter, spending mornings walking dogs and afternoons painting landscapes. When he applied the future self-test, it became obvious. The suits didn't belong to the man he was becoming. He donated nearly all of them, keeping only one for formal events. Suddenly, his closet was filled with hiking gear and art supplies, the things his future self would actually use. This shift is liberating. Instead of asking, "Am I betraying my past by letting this go?" you're asking, "Am I honoring my future by keeping this?" That small reframe turns guilt into motivation. And here's the psychology. Research on aging and resilience shows that seniors who envision a clear, positive future self have higher levels of well-being and lower levels of depression. By aligning your home with who you are becoming, you literally reinforce your mental health. Another example. Marjorie, a 70-year-old grandmother, once had an entire room devoted to scrapbooking, but her eyesight had weakened, and her real joy now came from gardening. She realized her future self wouldn't spend hours hunched over paper and scissors. So she downsized her supplies to one small bin and converted the room into a sunny indoor plant nursery. She told me it was the best decision she'd made in years. Her home finally matched her new passions. Here's a practical exercise. Walk through your home and ask the future self question out loud. Does this rocking chair support the life I want at 80? Does this pile of electronics belong in my next chapter? Saying it out loud forces clarity and makes it harder to hide behind nostalgia. And here's the medical tie-in. Clutter tied to outdated identities can actually weigh down your confidence and mobility. A study in the Journal of Environmental Psychology found that older adults who aligned their living spaces with current values reported higher physical activity and lower fall risk. Why? Because they weren't tripping over objects from a life they no longer lived. So let me ask you, who is your future self? Is it the world traveler, the community volunteer, the gardener, the artist? Drop it in the comments. I'd love to know. Decluttering becomes effortless when every decision brings you closer to that person. Now, this is the turning point. You've learned how to make faster choices, preserve energy, and align with your future. But there's still one final hurdle: regret. How do you prevent that sinking feeling of maybe I shouldn't have let it go? That's where trick number 7 comes in. A powerful ritual that ensures you release items with peace, not guilt. Trick number 7, completion ceremonies. Letting go of things isn't hard because of the objects themselves. It's hard because of what they represent: love, milestones, even identity. That's why many seniors secretly rescue items from the donation box after the fact. The solution isn't willpower, it's ritual. I call this step the completion ceremony. A completion ceremony is a simple act that allows you to honor an item before releasing it. By creating a sense of closure, you free yourself from the urge to second guess. Take Margaret, a retired nurse. She had shelves stacked with patient thank you cards, notes, and little gifts from families she'd helped. They represented decades of service. Instead of boxing them all away, she invited her children over and read her 5 favorite cards aloud. Then she placed them in a scrapbook, photographed the rest, and released them. She told me it felt like a graduation, a chapter celebrated, not erased. Completion ceremonies can be as simple or as meaningful as you choose. Take a photo before donating an object so the memory stays without the physical burden. Write a short note of gratitude and place it with the item before you let it go. Gather family for a passing on moment, sharing a story about an heirloom before gifting it. These small rituals signal to your brain that the relationship with the object has been acknowledged. Psychology calls this cognitive closure, and without it, we remain stuck in hesitation. With it, we feel peace. Another example: Daniel, age 82, had boxes of vinyl records he hadn't played in years. Instead of quietly hauling them to a thrift store, he invited 2 of his grandsons over for one last listening session. They played his favorites, danced in the living room, and each grandson picked a record to keep. The rest went to a local youth center. Instead of sadness, Daniel felt joy. His music was alive again in the next generation. Here's why this matters for health. Regret is stressful, and stress raises cortisol, weakens immunity, and disturbs sleep. When you complete a ceremony, you reduce regret and protect your well-being. You're not just decluttering, you're practicing emotional self-care. You don't need to overcomplicate it. Sometimes it's as quick as pausing, holding the item, and saying out loud, "Thank you. You served me well." Then it goes into the box. It sounds small, but that spoken gratitude changes the way your brain processes the goodbye. So here's my challenge to you. Pick one item you've struggled to part with. Create a 30-second ceremony around it, then tell me in the comments what you did. Your story may inspire someone else who's stuck. Now, with all 7 tricks complete, let's bring it together. Because decluttering isn't just about making space in your home, it's about making room for the next chapter of your life. And I'll show you exactly what that transformation looks like. 3 months ago, one of my patients, Evelyn, stood exactly where you might be now, overwhelmed by a lifetime of stuff. Closets overflowing, kitchen counters buried, a guest room that looked more like a storage unit. She told me she felt embarrassed to invite her grandchildren over because there was no space left to sit. So she applied these 7 ruthless tricks. She started with the triage method in her kitchen, moved to 10-minute sprints in her garage, and by the time she reached the future self-test, she was letting go of items with a confidence she never thought possible. The result? Evelyn reclaimed her entire home in less than 6 weeks. Today, her dining room welcomes her family again. She has space for an art corner she'd always dreamed of. And more than that, her energy, her mood, her sense of freedom completely shifted. That's the real reward here. Decluttering isn't about losing objects. It's about gaining back the life you want to live. Let's remind ourselves of the roadmap. The ruthless triage method. Fast decisions, no maybe pile. The 10-minute sprint, protect your energy with short bursts. The stranger test. Keep only what would matter to an outsider. the replacement reality check. Numbers don't lie. If it's cheap and unused, it goes. The energy investment scale, save your emotional effort for the 8s, 9s, and 10s. The future self-test, design your home for who you're becoming, not who you were. Completion ceremonies, release with gratitude and prevent regret. Master these and you don't just clear a house, you rewrite your daily life. Now I want to hear from you. Which of these 7 tricks will you start with today? Leave your answer in the comments. I reply personally, and your story might help another senior who's struggling. And if Evelyn's transformation inspired you, give this video a like and share it with someone who needs a push to start. These strategies only work if they're used, and sharing them might be the first step for someone else's journey.